didn't hit start recording. See, I told him about it. But hold on. All right, hit it, guys. What you guys got?
So God told Noah to build the ark, and Noah did.
Come on.
And he told that he has to get each animal, female and male.
Come on, somebody.
He did.
And he did it.
And he went in the ark.
Yes, he did.
And it rained for 40 days and nights. And
even more than that.
And then God let the animals free, and God sent a rainbow up in the sky.
That's it, buddy. Preaching the word. What do you got, Sam?
We don't be fear.
No fear. What else?
We are God in a sound mind.
We have a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind.
Yes.
Yes.
And we are grateful.
We are grateful. Come on. What else you got?
And we love preaching.
We love preaching. Come on. What else?
And
we bless people.
We bless people, and we worship people. And we praise God.
Well, we worship God with people, and we praise God. Give me 5, buddy. Love you so much. All right, you guys go take your bubblies. Take your bubblies. Love you guys. So proud of you guys. Welcome to Let's Talk Liberty. As you can see, I'm joined with my friend BC. How are you, BC?
I'm good tonight.
All right. Well, tonight we're talking, and we got Pastor Judah. Oh, we gotta huddle in for the thumbnail here. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Now we can go back to full screen there, Pastor Judah.
Right.
We're talking about the great global economic reset, and I'm bringing Brother BC on, so you guys kind of know. Oh, there's what is Buck saying? Can you? Yep.
Hi, Hatman Sam. Hi, CJ.
What's up, Buck? Hey, Claudia. Welcome, Facebook. Hey, make sure to ask questions tonight, all right? So I'm going to ask a lot of questions. We didn't know exactly where to start. Me and BC always have great conversations, and I thought, hey, we should have one of these live on the air. So there's no real script here. Just be forewarned. We don't have a real agenda here besides we're just going to have a conversation. So why don't you start out by telling us how you got into all this stuff?
Okay. CJ really grabbed it tonight by Noah. I mean, it took extreme faith for him to build something and to believe in something that never has been done before in the history of the planet. And so, looking at the salvation that Christ brought, perhaps what I'm going to be talking about tonight is the second largest thing that's ever hit the planet. In the early 2000s, I began to get concerned about the United States and the economy and where we were going. And I read an article about the comptroller of the United States had put out. The comptroller is basically a person who writes the checks for the United States government. And the comptroller's advice was, if we don't change our ways economically with the debt that we are creating and pumping out, we're going to be going over a financial cliff that we will never return from. And that really grabbed me, because it's not just for me, but you look at the future of your kids, your grandkids. And so I wanted to know what was going to happen in the future, like many of us do. And so I was reading in John one day, and this verse really jumped out at me. He says, and this is John chapter 15, verse 15, "No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all things that I heard from my Father I have made known to you." And so I took that to heart, and I said, Lord, this is in 2014, so many years had come and gone since I had read this article. And at this point, I recognized that we were heading for something huge in our future economically, not just as the United States, but as a world community. And so I said, Lord, I don't know what this event is, but I want to know a few things. I want to know what it is, understand it, and learn how to benefit from it as a believer. And so the very next morning after praying this, I dove into looking for something. I really didn't know what I was looking for. And the first thing that I came across was a retired minister from the Alaska pipeline area. This was in the 70s. This man was named Lindsey Williams. He put out a real short 20-minute video called the GCR. And I had no idea what that was. But it stood for the Global Economic Reset.
Wait, GER?
GCR. global community reset, I guess, if you want to call it that. But
okay.
they term it different. And so Lindsay had talked about a relationship that he had built with an elitist, somebody that is maybe in the Rockefeller camp as far as financial wealth. But those people don't make themselves very known in the community. They want to keep their lives a secret. But this chaplain, Lindsay Williams, had made a relationship with this man over 30 years. And this elitist would never reveal his name, but he would call out certain events in a country. And he said, Lindsay, look for this leadership to change very soon. He never gave him a real date, but it always happened. And then later on, he would say, we're going to have something called Obamacare. This was 3 years before we as Americans even heard about that. He says it's not anything to do with health care, but it's a tax on the American people. And it came to pass. And so he talked to Lindsay about an economic event coming called the GCR, where every currency in the world would reset to a true value of that country's wealth. You and I have assets and liabilities. We can take those assets and liabilities and come up with a number. Either it's negative or it's positive of what we're worth. And that was done with each country. So each country has goods and services. They have people that can produce those goods and services. And it has wealth in the ground, whether it's oil, palladium, bromodium, iridium, gold, silver, diamonds. And so each country was given a certain value of wealth. This is where I started to understand that these certain currencies were going to revalue. At the time, I only knew that there was going to be 3 currencies that were going to revalue. Today, I understand there's going to be 27 currencies that revalue higher than the dollar, and others about the same, and then some obviously were going to be lower than the dollar.
And see, I told you, the buck says Lindsay had a big impact on many people. Hey, Dana, are you watching? I think you might be watching. Good to see you. Miss you. Love you. Welcome, Gregory. Hey, Jason. Is that one of your friends, Jason? Maybe. Hey, Jason. Welcome. Not to cut you off. I just want to say hi to people as they pop in.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, by the way, Rumble, if you're watching live, we're not watching your comments, but we love you. So feel free to leave the comments. We'll try to answer them later. YouTube, feel free to ask questions as we go. But continue on the story. So this guy, so to summarize so far, you found a source. He had information that wasn't being released to the public, but was coming to pass. This event would happen, and then it happened. This event would happen, and then it happened. Can you give us a few examples of those? Obamacare is one of them. Is there any other big ones that come to mind as like he said this would happen, and then it happened?
As far as the elitist,
Yeah,
saying
or
to
just
Lindsay?
Yeah, Lindsay, things that he said that you can think of.
Just different government regimes were going to take place.
Like regime changes and stuff.
Regime changes, and I'll give you an example. One of them was going to be Iraq. In the 90s, George Bush Sr. was obviously our president, but prior to that, he was the head of the FBI, and so he had intelligence of what was going on behind the scenes, maybe that a normal president wouldn't have because of the time that he had spent in that intelligence service. Lindsay had talked about a regime change in Iraq that was coming, and that change happened when we went to war with Iraq. Saddam Hussein was a dictator at the time, and he was not kind to his own people. If you didn't agree, you didn't go home alive. And so you and your family would agree with what he said no matter what, otherwise you wouldn't survive. And so we, moving into the future a little bit, you've got George Bush Jr. becoming president, and the 9/11 incident that happened while he was president.
Real quick side tangent: was it a false flag? Did we do it? What's your just personal take
On 9/11?
Yeah.
9/11 was set up to make it look like Bin Laden was the terrorist behind the mastermind. And when you see pictures of Bin Laden, he was like 6'4", 5. He's not the typical Muslim. And personal people of testimonies that have I've read about knew the Bin Laden family. And this man was a kind and gentle Muslim, not the terrorist that the media made him out to be. And when we look at the incident of 9/11, there's some strange things that happened. And many of you in the audience might have read this already and chalked it up to some good reasoning of what happened and why it happened. In the early 1900s, the CCP, or the Communist China Party, lent the United States several $100 million worth of gold. We were hurting at that time as a nation. We were going just prior to the Great Depression, and so we needed some liquidity and cash to support our dollar. They made us a loan. I think it was a 100-year loan.
So the note on that was coming up.
The note was coming up on that, and it was interesting to find out the date on this loan when it was due.
September 12th, right?
No. We had the attack of the planes, and you can see different angles of the planes, which doesn't really line up. And some of the, didn't you say that the media had announced one of the towers fell before it did?
Oh yeah, World Trade Center 7 never even had a plane hit it, and it collapsed in free fall speed, pancaked into its own footprint.
And prior to
Controlled
this,
demolition, clearly.
Prior to this, several weeks before, certain floors of the trade center were closed off, and people saw men with black suits coming in suitcases. So that kind of adds up to this as well. But what was in the basement of the trade centers was pallets and pallets of gold. Those were removed 2 weeks prior to the towers falling.
When was the note due on it? Because I remember, I think you told me.
The note is
before.
interesting because the plane attack started, I believe, at 8:15ish in the morning.
That's
on
right.
9/11.
That's right.
President Bush Jr. was made aware of this while he was reading to the elementary, and it's interesting to see his expression because it really doesn't change when he's been given this information. He expected it to happen.
I'm sure you've seen the video with the weird things they're reading.
Yeah.
Hit, plane, steel, kite, like the weirdest possible video on the internet. If you haven't seen that, check out George Bush. What the children are literally going through some kind of verbal assignment where the teacher's saying, it's like a pronunciation assignment, and the words they're using are like hit, plane, steel,
and
kite.
that's an elitist acknowledgement, because when they do these types of false flags in public, they have to acknowledge them and they have to give credence to what they're doing by allowing it to be seen by the public. Maybe not so easily in front of your face, but in code, either by the way they dress or by what you just described and how the elementary class was dealing with the verbiage that day. So getting back to the time and the date, the contract was due for this gold repayment to China on 9/11 at 12 p.m.
Well,
the attack began early in the morning. Now, one other thing that really adds...
Basically, we just shafted the Chinese. Is that what you're saying?
We did, and so they weren't happy. And President Trump dealt with them years later, and maybe we can go into that a little bit later on how they were actually repaid for this loan, and they had the contract due. And President Trump, even though he does not care for the Communist Party, he honored the contract. And if Americans knew what the Chinese got for that contract, they would not be happy. Because, number one, I'll just spell it out for you. The only thing that America had left at this point in time that was worth anything was our pension funds for the military and the police. And that was about $3 trillion. And that's what they were obliged to get in the contract. So if the police found out their pension fund was gone and the military found out their pension fund was gone, these are high stress positions that you work for that pension and you hope that you live to see it.
Well, so they're gone right now.
They're gone. They were given away in Trump's
deal with China.
Yes, in his term.
Okay.
Well,
along this journey, and I'm going to let you finish because you're kind of on a story arc right now. I don't want to derail you too much, but I'm already bubbling over with questions. So just so if you're watching, you guys kind of know I've talked a little bit about around some of these topics and discussions, conspiracy kind of things. But I do want to I guess I'm making mental notes to dive into some of these questions. So the pension fund, Jude, if you're taking notes, the pension fund is one of the questions. But keep going. I don't want to derail you from your story.
So to finish up with this contract, not only did the planes hit early morning to destroy the towers. The gold was already shipped out, so it was gone. Over 3,000 American lives, I think it's close to 3,500 American lives were lost that day. But here's another key to that contract is the attorney or the law firm that held all the paperwork for this contract that was owed money from the United States to the Chinese, the Communist Party, let's make that clear, was in the middle of one of the towers. And I can't remember which tower it is because it's been years since I've done the notes on this. But so the contract was destroyed, the gold was taken away, the buildings were destroyed that the contract was in, and the gold was in. And so I'm sorry, guys, we don't have any paperwork left. We don't owe you anything.
Yeah, well, convenient, right? Yeah, follow the money. You always figure out what's going on.
I just want to add that this was not planned in whatsoever about the 9/11 derailing.
I can't help myself.
He's got it all in. Yeah.
I can't help myself. Yeah, it's true. Keep going. So, if you don't mind, I'm gonna accelerate just a little bit because I've talked with you offline a bit. The global reset. Lindsay, and what was his last name again?
Lindsay Williams started this for me, and this is the very first thing.
He's one of these key voices.
He's one of the first voices that I heard, and I liken this to a kid in a restaurant, like maybe CJ's age, where the waitress comes over and they give you a piece of paper with a bunch of dots on it. And as you start connecting the dots, the picture starts to form. And as you continue, now it becomes much more clear than when you first started. And that's the way it's been for me. This has been a long, anticipated move that was very brilliantly made. And obviously, it's a mastermind of God with human influence behind this to at least what I've witnessed, to see things as stages go through phase 1, 2, 3, 4 to where we're at now be completed.
And Gregory says, and this is on your note, he says the military recently changed from a pension type retirement to a 401k type retirement. I thought it was in works before Trump, but I could be wrong, but it definitely changed in the last few years. I don't know how related that is to what you're...
Well, that makes sense because if you have no longer a pension, you have to give them something to retire with. That was taken away from also the prison officers back in the late 90s as well. The pension was taken away from us, voted, and we were given a 401k.
And then, of course, they crashed the stock market, so it's going to be worth nothing.
Right. And we can talk a little bit about that tonight if we have time.
Well, okay, so yeah, and I'm going to zoom ahead just for a second. According to Lindsay, because I'm like interested in some of this stuff. According to Lindsay Williams and the other voices that you respect, were they all in agreement that this is going to be good for a poor person in the United States, or like for the average person that this was culminating to an actual good outcome?
At this point in time, if you were listening and taking a step of faith in what Lindsay was saying, yes, it would be a good retirement for you. This is what I first saw as a retirement plan for myself. And I'll use an example of the Iraq dinar, and I know that many people have said, "Oh, that's a scam." That whole idea of the Iraqi dinar in America and people being able to get money for that exchange, and that's just a bunch of hooey. And it's easy to hear that, but if we'll take a few minutes, I can show you very easily of how this is very realistic to see. In the mid to late 90s, the Iraq dinar was, and this is easy for you to find on the internet. Just type up.
Go ahead, Judy.
Currency history of the Iraq dinar throughout the years.
We'll throw up some screenshots as we're talking here.
The rate in the late 90s for the Iraq dinar was $3.22 above the United States dollar. And you say, well, why would that be? I thought the dollar was the most strongest currency in the world. But Iraq has a small population, about 24 million as of today in their whole country. But they have great wealth in not just oil. They're the 4th largest oil producer in the world. They have diamonds, they have rich minerals of gold, silver, platinum.
Any of these graphs look like helpful to you? I know it's far away.
Yeah, it is a little bit away. You should be able to get something that comes up, Judah, with
He's looking
some
for the
dates
90s.
and values of the currency of Iraq dinar.
Pegged to the dollar. So this is in U.S. dollars,
Here
right?
we go. Here we
Well,
go.
it would be exchanging their exchange rate at that point in time. So
Copy.
many of our leadership and administration have
Down
come
in the
through the
middle,
years,
down
and
the
they don't agree with certain countries and the way they want to run things. One of them was
Other project.
Khomeini in Iran, and so we went in there and we took out their leadership, and the same thing that we did with other countries. Now I'm going to try and stay on track with Iraq to give you guys a consistency of what happened.
Okay, and when he goes full screen here, just walk us through this. So hit slideshow, and then go to slides one camera. Yeah. So you
Okay.
can see it there. So history of Iraqi dinar,
Okay.
and that shows you 1992. It was right around $3 or whatever,
Okay.
and now it's plummeted
Right. And I'll explain why
to
it's plummeted.
2005.
So
Well, the war, right? I mean,
yes, we designed a war with Iraq, and if you go back to the videos, you'll hear President Bush come up with an idea that we need to go in because we suspect Iraq has weapons of mass destruction,
right.
and also we need to fight terrorism. How can you beat an idea?
Yeah.
We've
War on
always
terrorism.
gone to war with countries like Vietnam. We've gone to war with Germany, Japan, but we can defeat a country. But you can never defeat an idea. What if it pops up over here and all of a sudden, oh man, we missed it. Let's go in and attack again. So that was a brilliant plan on their part that we could always continually be in a state of war with a country if they have an idea that we don't agree with. So we took out Saddam Hussein and we initiated our own type of administration because we didn't agree with them. They wanted to go and stand on their own and be a sovereign nation by the gold that they had, and they had enough wealth at the time that it showed against the dollar that they were well above the value of what we had as a country. And so we didn't like that. And so I'll just do a little dramatization of how it could have went. Now I'm going to give you some entities that we helped form after World War II. The IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, they regulate every country's currencies. The United Nations, which is the military strong arm of America, since we have the largest support on their board, as well as the IMF. You have the Bank of International Settlements, which is the bank of all banks. And these entities that we helped develop after World War II are our friends because we're the ones that helped develop them. We maintain a stronger voting capability on those boards. And so if there's a country like Iraq that we don't agree with and they don't want to use the dollar like we want them to, this is how it could have went. President George Bush Jr. to IMF, ring-a-ding-ding-ding. Yes, Mr. President. We suspect that Iraq has got weapons of mass destruction and we're going to sanction them. We want you to sanction their currency as well. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. When is the war? We're going to start tomorrow. Click. So overnight, the Iraq dinar has a value of $3.22 above the United States dollar. Overnight, the sanctions come on from the United States and other allies in the United States. Now the IMF gets involved and they sanction the currency and they take it from $3.22 above the dollar, they drop it to negative $1,500 below the dollar. Now how, if you're fighting a superior force, which we were at the time, even though Iraq's army was about the fourth largest in the world, how do you economically fight against them? How do you politically fight, and how do you militarily fight against the country that has done that to your currency? So we went in, we destroyed their currency, we destroyed their culture. In that sense, we destroyed their infrastructure, their banking, their political. And during this whole chaos and confusion, Iran moves into their political administration and starts taking money with the help of Alri Muriki, which is the second dictator that comes in after Saddam Hussein, and they start skimming off the currency. Now, what we did after Iraq was attacked and we had won the so-called war, like we always do with other countries, we moved in and said, hey, we'll help you rebuild your country. First of all, we'll help you with your currency. We'll peg the dollar to the Iraq dinar. You can't use it outside of your country, but you can use it inside if you like. But the dollar will be the main item that you use for moving money and goods and services in your country and outside. So we are going to be your bridge. We're going to be your economic source outside, so you can keep living as a country and importing and exporting goods and services.
Okay, let me. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So I'm on page with the Iraq deception and the whole plan there. That makes sense to me, but I do want to make it practical for viewers today. So let's zoom forward now. The United States is involved in all these shenanigans at the highest level. We've ripped off China. We stole the gold. We didn't make good on our 100-year loan. We diverted. We took a ton of resources out of Iraq and the Middle East through this false flag war, or whatever you want to call this. The guys at the top continually make terrible, immoral, unethical decisions, but somehow it's all going to end well for the common person. So I want to get back to that. Like now, see, because I'm sort of, I do everything based on the Bible. So in the Bible, it's like, you have this great tribulation coming. Now, we're not going to experience that as a church, right? I'm a pre-trib rapture guy. I believe that with all my heart. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not fearful of it. But I don't see like a massive justice, a glorious day for your common person ahead. I actually see gross darkness continuing to grow. So why is it that the top elites are now going to do the right thing after thousands of years of doing the wrong thing? How do we get to justice?
Well, the top elites are not going to, they're always been selfish. They've always tried to do for themselves, and they want control as...
Well, who are the good guys then?
Well, the good guys are considered the white hats. That's one term that they use.
But who are they? Like
the white hats, how it all, and again, this is my opinion tonight, and so I'm not an attorney, I'm not a financial advisor, I don't play one on TV. So this is how my understanding is that from the sources that I've read. After JFK was assassinated, he tried to take out the Federal Reserve by himself. And the Federal Reserve didn't like that idea because they took away the idea of printing and coining money from the American people. And we can, if you want to pull up that a dollar, the image of the current 2008 series $100
in the slide. Yep, that one. Right there.
It's already in the
Top
queue
one.
there. There you go. You'll notice on the top, the left of the bill looks like it did from all the way from the 1970s. From the blue strip to the right, things have changed dramatically.
Yeah, golden
why?
Feather.
So we have the security strip that can track that dollar or that $100 bill in real time anywhere on the planet. You have the gold feather. You have the inkwell below the feather, and inside the inkwell is the Liberty Bell. The miniature gold lettering to the right underneath your green stamp is, if you look with a magnifying glass, the Constitution of the United States. And in gold you have the 100 on the front and the back. And then there's some other things like the watermark, and if you look with a little into the sun, you can see a face behind that light tan watermark.
Okay.
But I had a theory about 4 or 5 years ago of what this bill reflected, and I proved it to be true, is what you're seeing from the left side of the bill is a fiat currency in front of the United States person. And it's going to a gold back system in the near future. So this is a transitional bill showing in front face of the American people that we're going from a fiat currency to a gold or asset backed currency in the future. The gold feather and the inkwell represent that Congress is the only authority to print and coin money in this country. That was stolen from them in 1913 on Christmas Eve by a group of private bankers, which later became known as the Federal Reserve. They don't have anything to do with the United States government, although the name implies that. But they have to do with the bankers that were sent here from England to start.
Monster from Jekyll Island.
Yes, The Creature from Jekyll Island is a book that you can still find, and it gave the meeting of these private bankers and their intent. They had tried twice to create a central bank that was different than anything else on the planet. Every other central bank in the world is a government-seated bank. They wanted to create a private bank, and they succeeded on the third time. on 1913 Christmas Eve. The quorum had stayed that they wanted. The rest of Congress had gone home for the Christmas vacation, and they had President Wilson in their back pocket. And so they passed the Federal Reserve Act Christmas Eve. Wilson executive ordered it into law. And now you've got a private group of bankers at the helm of a country with great wealth, and they create the finances for that country. So this is
But that's where I want to drill down. Who are the white hats, and not just who, but like
yes, the white hats.
Like, but not as a theory, as a person. Do you know anybody of them by name?
As a person, I have just read several articles, and many than just one or two fly-by-night articles.
But would you say Trump is one of them, for example?
Trump is a patriot, yes. And here's how, my understanding, this is how the story evolved. The military saw this happen to JFK. They knew what his intent was, but they weren't strong enough to protect him, and they weren't wise enough to protect him. He tried to do most of it on his own. I'm talking of JFK. When this happened, 400 or more generals in our military in different branches got together and they said, we will never let this happen again to a president of the United States. When we find, and we're going to bide our time, and we're going to develop a plan to destroy this creature called the Federal Reserve that has so much power, not just here in the United States, but they've infected the world and infiltrated areas of leadership and finances. We will never let this happen to an American president again. And so President Trump was approached to run as president prior to his term, and they pledged their support, not just the United States, but my understanding is the Brics Alliance, and you can find this very easily on the internet. The Brics Alliance stands for 5 major economies in the world: Brazil, India,
Russia,
South Africa, Russia, China, and we're talking President Xi, the Republican version of China, just as we have the Democrats and the Republicans here in the United States. So there's a divided party in China. The Republicans have pledged their support, as well as the United States military. And they said, we will take our militaries and combine them, and we will take down this creature called the Federal Reserve and its power that is infiltrated with the elitists around the world. Another term for them is called the Khazarian Mafia.
But wouldn't, I'm going to insert a question along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So people at the highest level, the Federal Reserve, it's like the absolute power, or power corrupts absolute, power corrupts absolute. That sort of that sentiment is where I'm going with this. Why wouldn't the Federal Reserve just buy them off? If there was ever a threat against their power, they have a lock on all the money. It seems like the way they've had so much success in the past is simply to bank on people's self-interest and greed, and to say, hey, instead of coming after us, why don't we just pay you off? Why don't you just become a part of the beast? I guess why would these? Because the political types historically are people who have chosen to become busybodies concerned in the affairs of not just managing their own life, not just providing for their families, not working hard with their own hands, like the Bible commands a man of God to do. So a person of God, a person of integrity, is not meant to actually spend their whole life going to manage and solve other problems. They're actually meant to just, solve their family's problems and stay out of other people's lives. So we're now thinking, Milton Friedman used to say this about the politicians, like, where are these angels? Where are these people that are going to go into the political realm, but all of a sudden have the right kind of incentives or the right kind of heart? So why do we think guys from, Brazil, Russia, India, China, why do we think the political types are going to do the right thing? I guess one of my big questions is, who are they, and why would they ever actually go after this behemoth called the Federal Reserve?
Let me.
I don't know if my question was that clear.
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm gonna lead off with a president that our media has made out to be one of the worst enemies of the United States, and that's Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin does, and I'm saying his last name correctly, Putin. He hates the globalist. He's made that. You can find this very easily. That he's made very few. He's made some comments that he doesn't care for the globalist agenda at all, and so he's a patriot to his countrymen, and he wants to rid the world of the globalists and their source of power, which is the Federal Reserve. And so him and Trump have made very much amends in that force. I can throw out an example to you, and it's the evidence is findable, but a lot of the stuff that I'm giving to you, it's going to take some research to find. It's just not out there, obviously, in the mainstream media, because that's something. Even if you were to find some of the stuff that we're talking about tonight, it's going to take a while for you to search through. And what I've found is you'll find page after page after page after page of distractions. You'll maybe looking for a definite, like for an instance, I sent Judah the idea of the definition for Gesera and Nesera. Now, I went to look for this week, and it took me almost an hour to find the actual real document that gave what's going to happen in the
Full
future.
screen, main camera, desktop video.
And so, I'm going to give you an example. This past August, I believe it was, is when the largest container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. This ship contained 30,000 semi-truck trailer-sized containers. Now, that's a large amount. That's one of the biggest ships on the ocean. 30,000. And ever since, I believe it was the late 80s, the Egyptian government owns the Suez Canal, and that's one of the largest sources of income, is the passage and the passage of the ships going through the canal. For a ship to get sideways in that canal is almost impossible, because they have remote controlled satellite captains, if you will, that take the ship by remote control through the canals. And so this ship, in my personal opinion, and I think the evidence that I'll give you a little bit here, and you may say, well, it's not real evidence, it's just your opinion. That's
Well,
that's
let's
fine.
look at this site. This is good. This is actually good. So this
Okay.
is Nassar. So we have 9 points. How many points are there?
19.
We have 19 points. Go to the first one. So I'm looking at these. Basically, this is
This is the light at the tunnel for what we're going through to answer one of your questions.
And me, I'm a libertarian. I'm a true patriot. I want a free society in every way. I'm a Christian, right? I have liberty on the inside of me. I read these things, and it's like a dream come true. Abolishes the income tax. Abolishes the IRS. Basically, somebody who wrote this. So what's the website called?
HealingSanctuary.proboards.com.
Okay, so whether this is true or not, I'll tell you what it is. It's like pure hope, right? I read this, and of course, everything in me is like, oh, imagine a world where, like, somehow the income tax was abolished. That it all credit card, which the first point is so off the grid, I'm skipping it because it seems like such a silly point, but maybe it's true, right? Number 3, abolish it. No, so the first point says it zeroes out all credit card, mortgage, and other bank debt due to illegal banking.
And I can give a personal testimony to a couple of these.
But like, so I'm just going through like, when I read those things, obviously there's something in me that immediately says, like, imagine the world without those things. And then of course I want to jump all over it and believe it, but do we have good reason to believe it is like, and I guess that's, so how do we know, like, who wrote this? How do we know it's legit? You know, who's the authority that we're trusting in that's saying this is going to happen? I guess that's what I'm really trying to nail down at. So
I believe this was written back in the late 50s and early 60s. This was brought to President Clinton and forcibly signed by military, and that might sound way too conspiratorial for some of you, and that's fine. But there was a gag order on Congress that they're not allowed to speak of what this is, and that sounds, well, of course,
Well,
get it covered up. But
one of the things I've noticed about this too, I had like before I forget this question.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, because we've talked about this before, like number 18. No, I remember Buck, and I read it. I read through a lot of it. I'm not gonna say I combed through it. But here's like, some of it seems to just be a wild misunderstanding of economics. So let's take number 18. It says releases enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes. Now I've seen this happen a lot. Like there's all this gold or there's all this money stored up. But if you know anything about economics, money is a medium of exchange. So it's not like there's a whole bunch of bricks that are stored up. There's a whole bunch of labor hours. So if you just release money, no one got more wealthy, right? This is like, because there's this lack of economic understanding in these documents, I scratch my head. If tomorrow there was 1 billion more ounces of gold, if gold was only a medium of exchange, no one would have gotten any richer at all. Prices would have just gone up in terms of gold. Now you could have more gold fillings. Gold could be used for other things, for direct use cases. But you know, this idea that there's going to be this, that you're going to have this wealth come in, and again, this is just one example of this. It just actually reveals a misunderstanding of how markets work, because the medium of exchange doesn't create new things. There's not new houses, there's not new land, there's not new labor hours. Or does that make sense? So like when I read that in Nasara the first time, I immediately had like a red flag, like why is there a lack or help, or I guess it seems like there's just economic illiteracy in the paper itself. Like somehow all this gold is going to be released and people are going to be more wealthy, but that's not how it works, obviously, unless you just want to like have gold clothes or something, or use, you know, if you want to use gold as a direct thing. But having more gold doesn't make more food. Having more gold doesn't make more water. Having more gold doesn't, it's just a medium of exchange. Just like having more dollars. They can print 1 trillion new dollars tomorrow. No one got actually wealthier. And obviously there's nuance there, right? The people who receive the money first, they can spend it before the prices have gone up, before inflation. You know, I get the nuance, but I'm just saying, like in theory, increasing the money supply doesn't benefit an economy at all, because it doesn't make the pie any bigger. Does that make sense? So when I hear something that releases enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes, it's not like it released a million new people that are going to go serve on the mission field. It's not like it released 1 million new food packs, right? It just released sums of money, and I'm just like scratching my head, like whoever wrote this, do they realize that that's not how the world works? You can't just release the medium of exchange and expect for wealth to increase. But I've seen that throughout Nasara, and I guess because I've been formally trained in economics, it always irks me to see that's not how. Am I making sense, Jude? Are you following me?
Yeah.
Like if you just release a whole bunch of new gold, no one got wealthier, because gold only is valuable insofar as it represents the goods and services of an economy. So the increasing I don't know. I've seen it a few times, and it's always just kind of like gotten my attention. Like, what do they mean by it releases enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes? And I don't know if that's a question you want to answer or not. I just that's dawned on me while
I can go into a little bit of that. Nasara.
And Sonia's saying, can you move a little bit so they can see you?
Oh,
right here.
Sorry.
Right there. Perfect. There you go. Thank you, Sonia.
Thanks, Sonia.
Yeah, Alexa also texts me all the
So Nasara,
we're all floating off on the side.
yeah, we are. We're getting comfortable. Nasara was created as a leverage for several reasons for the countries of the not the United States, but the countries of the world. There's 209 sovereign nations on our planet, and for them to participate in Nasara, there has to be some sort of incentive. And so one of the things that is going to be issued is funds. Some of them are called sovereign funds. Each country has a sovereign fund that they delegate many times for humanitarian purposes. And for instance, they'll do like Canada, off their oil sales, they'll give each citizen of the country around $6,000 or $7,000 a year, just belonging to that country, to participate in the prosperity of that country. Whether you go to the bar and you drink it down, or whether you go build a house or help your neighbor with it, that's up to you. But it is kind of ideal of a humanitarian purpose in its background, whether it's individual or community. Nasara was purposely given to bring the communities of the world together, to take out war, to bring the standard of living up from places like Uganda or maybe in Europe right now, and bring them to a standard of living that the United States has been accustomed to for instance, we take for granted just running water. Some people on the planet still don't have running water. And Arch, your host that you had on, he's attributed to that as bringing fresh water to people still right now on the planet. We don't have it yet. So there are certain trusts that have been set up called the Saint Germain Trust, Dubai 1 and 2, the Petrocelli's trusts. These were trusts that have been brought to and from, and again, when you get into this and you start reading this, you start to wonder, it's like, man, this sounds like you're saying way too good to be true. But there are dragon families, and I'll use that term loosely, as a community of people that have been given an issue or an edict to guard wealth over the centuries to a point in time where it would be needed in the world. And some of you who are biblical minded, this is the year of Jubilee. And Jubilee is tied into the Old Testament, where I'm going to summarize real fast that if you owed a debt, for instance, if you bought a piece of land at a certain period of time, that debt would be released from you, and there would be no more debt. So you'd be free of the debt. In this in the Necera document, it talks about debt-free of credit card debt, all public debt, whether it's a $50,000 debt to a hospital, whether it's a mortgage to a house or a car. Those debts are going to be relieved in Necera. Because we've been.
How is that fair? Just curious. How is that fair?
How is it fair?
Yeah, is it? I mean,
well, my question would be: is how is it fair to have an entity that would enslave the world now because of the world reserve currency of the dollar into debt slavery, where people just work and work and work, and yet they can't seem to get out of debt because that weight has been placed upon them in such a way that they can't get out?
Well, if I could, I mean,
yeah, go ahead,
the only thing I want to throw in there is, and I'm coming from a completely just, what's fair mindset here, and I would just ask how they got in debt in the first place, I guess, because it's the same thing when Biden promises like student loan forgiveness on college. Because I'm like, what does that mean? Like, they chose to enter an agreement, and we're letting them out of their agreement to break their word, and that's it actually doesn't.
It seems super ungodly. So basically, it puts the person as the victim. There's this big, huge, dark system. You're always going to stay down unless there's this other. It kind of just puts it feels like it makes a person a victim in their mind, and I don't know. I guess there's two sort of main things that kind of irk me. One is if I went to go make a decision as an adult to buy a house that I couldn't afford. I could have rented. I could have slept on my parents' couch. I had many options that were available for me, but I said no. I want the house of my dreams. I'm going to go get a mortgage. So I've done that as a sentient adult human being. I've made a decision, and personal responsibility is a huge part of a biblical person. So, I don't view it as like the evil bankers gave me no, I made a decision. Now, I did become slave to the lender. That is true. And of course, the Bible wants you to be out. But I feel like it's so ungodly just for people that racked up a whole bunch of credit card debt and made bad decisions. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, it's just gone. I feel like that doesn't seem like justice at all. Like, I'm not saying the system's great, but I knew what I was doing when I got into debt. I chose to live outside of my means to pay, and I suffered the consequences of being in debt. But for somebody to come and just wave a wand and say you don't have debt anymore seems to be like, I don't know. Like, again, it would be awesome. The Year of Jubilee, I hear you. There is a biblical precedent for it, so I'm not totally discounting it. There is a biblical precedent for the relief of debt. I do see that. It is in the Bible. It is a beautiful thing. Israel, if I understand my history correctly, they never actually did it. Even though it was in Scripture and they were supposed to do it, they never actually did it. And I'm not saying that means it can't happen. Of course, Jesus is our Jubilee.
What if that means Jesus comes back this year?
Yeah, which see, I look to the return of Christ as the solution to everything, right? The second coming of Christ. I put zero hope in man's ability to right the ship. Obviously, the church is going to be saving people left and right, but okay. But sorry, we derailed you. So where were we at there? Let's get the momentum back. Let's get the momentum back.
Well, BC, actually, if I can ask one for you.
Yeah. Jump in with a question.
You had mentioned at the beginning of pulling up this website that you had a couple personal testimonies on a couple of them. I feel like if you wanted to share those, that would be really cool.
Let me see how I can make this fit into. Well, I'll just start off by just this is what's happened with me personally.
Oh, and by the way,
again, I got to slide over here a little bit more.
Yeah, and full disclosure, you guys all know me. This is my process for truth acquisition. Is I become a crazy skeptic. I hit that thing over and over and over again, and if the arguments stand up to scrutiny, I'm more likely to adopt them as strong opinions, right? Because a lot of this stuff, like you said yourself, a lot of these are opinions. In a sense, we can't prove. It's a blog. We're reading somebody's blog. It doesn't mean it's not true. It just means we are there's a measure of faith. We're trusting in an authority that we don't personally even know necessarily. A lot of times it's an electronic authority. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means we're building a case, right? So I want the viewers to know too, like I'm actually on purpose playing the adversary, right? I don't want to say the devil's advocate, but that role,
right,
in order to approach truth.
Let me give you a personal testimony that happened to me.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, I had heard a rumor that your Social Security card, when you were issued a number as a baby, there was a value behind that, and that it was being traded on the stock market. Me as a person. And so I started digging into that a little bit, and what I found was interesting is currently we're underneath admiral law. When a soul or a person is born on this planet, for 14 days, admiral, if I can say it right, admiral law states that you are lost at sea, that soul is, until it's attached to something. When the hospitals roll out the red carpet, one of the first things that they have, and when you have a baby, is they want you to give that baby a name, and they want to identify that baby's name with a Social Security number. When I started researching into this, I took my Social Security number because I had heard that I was being traded on the market. I wanted to kind of find out if that was actually true or not. So there are 12 Federal Reserve branches in the United States, and they're in regions. One's in Dallas. There's some in Minnesota. There's also one in New Jersey. Now I took my Social Security number and I ran down different accounts, which is called a TDA, a Treasury Deposit Account, in the Treasury Department in each of these branches. And I found my Treasury Deposit account by my Social Security number in the New Jersey Federal Reserve branch. I found out that my Social Security number in a group of other people in 2002 were being traded on the open stock market. And I found that group on the stock market. So I wanted to try and determine what my value was if I'm being traded. And so I started looking at this Treasury Deposit account that I had discovered in the Federal Reserve branch in New Jersey. And so I did an experiment. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if it would work. So I took a PayPal account and I hooked it to this Treasury Deposit account in the Federal Reserve branch in New Jersey. And I used my PayPal account with this number and this Treasury Deposit account number. So it's kind of like a check number, a checking account number. And I started paying off my Discover card bill. And it went through. And I thought, wow, that's strange. It actually worked. There must be value here. And so I increased it the next day, paid off the credit card completely. And then I started on my house mortgage. And in the total amount of maybe 4 days, I had added up paying off around $200,000. I thought, this is great. This is life. This is good. And then something else happened. The PayPal account company contacted me and they said, you're using an account that you're not authorized to use. And I said, what? Whose name is on that account? Robert Curtis. And you're saying I don't have the authority to use that account? No, you don't. And what they did was they called, and it's a financial term, clawed back. They sucked back that money that I had used the PayPal to pay these credit card and the mortgage with. They sucked it away from those vendors and took it back and put it back in the Treasury deposit account in the Federal Reserve. And they closed my PayPal account. Now, they never came after me or tried to arrest me for using something that was illegal, so there's truth in that each person on this planet, because I've learned since then that the Vatican had the power underneath the Admiralty law,
The maritime admiral.
the maritime, yes, to control every soul that was born, not just in the United States, but on the planet, and they would use them as chattel and market them and gain wealth for themselves. At that time, I found out finally that my worth in the balance of that treasury was $6.5 million as an individual. And so that leads me to believe, on the law of average, and I've found this in other articles, that the average person, depending on what they do for goods and services, their life, their age, their work profession, are worth between 3 and 10 million. This money has been taken away from us without our knowledge and without our authorization, and underneath NESARA is to be returned.
But I guess again, so
to us.
and this is where like the economic student in me starts to have serious trouble. So tomorrow, $10 million, we're just gonna go the best, goes to every single American. What changes in their life?
Well, if you erase their debt, if you give them
there's a loser, because when we say things like erase their debt, we're talking about, there's two sides to that equation. There's the people who made bad decisions. There's the people who made good decisions.
Right.
So what we're saying is the people who made bad decisions are going to be rewarded. The people that made good decisions are going to be screwed. The people that lent money are not going to get any of it back. The people that borrowed money are going to be forgiven. The people that made bad decisions are going to be blessed. The people that made good decisions are going to be screwed. That's what I hear. I don't hear that.
Well,
I don't hear that anything magically
The people
is
that
created.
made good decisions are going to receive that money as well. But here's
But again, so if everybody woke up with the $10 million or $100 million, no new bricks, no new cars, no new houses, only medium of exchange units have been introduced to this economy. I don't understand how no one's actually better off at all. When we used to teach money supply to students in college, we would use this hypothetical to prove this point. We would say, tomorrow, imagine if everybody woke up with $1 billion more in their account. Would anybody be richer? And it would take the economic students a while to figure it out? No, because all that would happen is that prices would increase in proportion to the new dollars, the new medium of exchange. So if all this is an accounting thing, why does it, like, again, if everybody got that $10 million, it's not like the Social Security place or whoever this account is holding real, food or houses or land or things of value. They're holding units of a medium exchange. So I guess that's where my, again, a big red light comes, because and I'm trying to understand, how does this help anybody if it's just an accounting. It ends up just being an accounting thing. Am I making sense? Or
Well,
am I confusing
I
it?
can give you a real simple acknowledgement of how it does help people. You and I both know families that are living in housing that is less than desirable to live in right now.
Sure.
And if they were allowed to have, let's say, even $100,000 right now, not 10 million, it would increase their standard of living.
Only if they got the 100,000 and no one else did, right? Or like only if poor people got the money, no one else did.
Or if they spent it in day one
without the prices increasing.
without the price increasing yet. Yeah.
But the point is, stuff. I'm just trying to. How does that? It's like, does someone just wave a magic wand and okay, you got $100,000 more? But like, if everybody got $100,000 more, no one's helped. We all agree with that, right? The money supply
Well, the stimulus
increasing.
checks, like they actually,
stimulus
they actually
checks
didn't help.
is a great example. Everybody thought they were getting money, and then all of a sudden, all the prices for the things they bought went way up, and now they
Right.
realize, oh, we got screwed. It didn't work
Now,
out.
one thing that you're not, I think, taking into account is we have a global reset. And not all of your exchange mediums are going to stay the same. We're going to have drastic swings in values. Countries that are living in poor conditions right now
No, I understand that part.
are going to be changed in their value system.
And so let's say, like, And I think if I understand that, because the U.S. has kind of been the global bad guy, we've kind of forced situations to increase the value of our dollar relative to other currencies.
Yes.
So it sounds like everyone who holds U.S. dollars is about to be screwed. I don't see a silver lining for the common person in the United States. I see, based on this whole story that I'm seeing pan out, I see actually a day of reckoning coming for everybody that holds U.S. dollars. The only group of people that seems to be benefited are the people that know what you're talking about and are owning the Iraq dollar. They're getting rid of their U.S. dollar, and they're getting the other dollars that are going to reevaluate higher after this happens. But that's not your common person in the United States. That's not your poor person. Basically, that probably represents 1% of the United people that know this information, and they're investing. They're getting rid of their dollars because they realize their dollars are about to be worth nothing, and they're getting this Iraqi dinar or whatever.
Right. Well, to give you a little understanding maybe on that is, we had the $100 bill that was shown as a transitional
Nick
bill.
says, by the way, I need the wand. Keep the checks. Sorry, keep going. Okay. Yeah, the $100 transitional bill. Pull that back.
So
up.
the transitional bill is allowing us to go to a gold-backed system. Now, we've already got an example in the world of an economy that has already done that. And in mainstream, you can find this easily, that they're saying that Russia right now is the strongest economy on the planet.
Because they were gold.
Because they have gone gold-backed. And that goes with the Ukraine war, the sanctions that are on that. And basically, Russia said, fine, if you guys... And I find it very interesting that the only people that really sanctioned Russia are the globalists, where their strongholds are. Ukraine is obviously against that, where you've got Biden, Pelosi, and all my children are on different boards receiving money for nothing. You've got Europe, which started the banking in the United States for the private banks of the United States. You've got the United States they're gonna stick with Europe in this sense, because this is the Federal Reserve strongholds is basically London and DC. So you've got that going on. So Russia made the first brave attempt in saying, if you want our commodities, we produce almost half the world's sunflower oil for cooking. India is a big user of the sunflower oil. You've got neon gas, which is made to form the lasers that script out the microchips, and we're already feeling the pain with that in many of the markets, especially the automobile market. There's many other commodities that Russia says, look, if you want our stuff, you're going to pay us in gold or rubles. Nobody carried rubles in the international scene because there wasn't really a value on them. But since that was the deal breaker, if you want our stuff, you need to trade in these two items. Several countries now are caving and saying, look, we can't do without these commodities. We need them to survive. And so they're actually buying the ruble, which is forcing the demand up of that currency. So what you had was, at the beginning of this, before the war, or if you want to call it a conflict, I don't call it a war, because actually when you do your research, Ukraine is a territory of Russia, not a separate state. So it'd be like us trying to invade Puerto Rico or Florida. It's our own territory. So you've got the ruble up here, and they drastically drop with the sanctions. But then now, as people say, oh, we messed up, we really do need what you're selling, now the price for the ruble has gone up here and even higher than where it was before, and become the strongest currency in the world, because it is gold backed and because the commodities are valued with that ruble, with that currency.
All right, Pastor Jude is going to find a ruble diagram to pull up here.
And it looks like you've got it there on the orange.
Okay, this looks great. Okay.
Yeah, you can just...
Sorry.
No, you're doing good. He's fast. Look at him. He's lightning
cut
fast.
paste.
Come on, man.
Blow it up.
There it is. Okay, so this is, but see, this one only shows the plummeting of it. Do you have one that shows where it went back up?
Okay.
Or
And it might be the sources that you're looking at too. They don't really want to let that
That's
information
true.
out so
I
easily.
should be on Google, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can go to an exchange, right? I mean, just type in like a live exchange. What's the ruble at? Like, because if they're real, that would be called arbitrage. If there was an
You
example,
could go into Google exchange rate dollar versus ruble.
Google,
Yeah.
exchange rate.
just find a place where you can buy it online in exchange, and you know it's the market rate. Because if it's not, you have an arbitrage
Now,
situation. where you can make
since
millions
Russia
of
has done
dollars.
this, the Brics Alliance, which is what I said earlier, is the joint force behind President Trump to help him defeat the globalist agenda. Those countries as well have gone to a gold-backed system. India, South Africa, Brazil, Russia, China, and also Zimbabwe has come into the fact, and about 12 other countries as well, including Saudi Arabia. So right now we've got about 3 billion people representing gold-backed currencies in the world. So that's also why you're seeing the dollar take such a big hit in the stock market. The value is depleting from the dollar, and so we're losing
So
value.
This is a exchange site for the ruble and the dollar, and it goes back to 2021. It looks like the ruble's in USD to ruble chart. So is this the US dollar dropping against the ruble? I think it is, which would give credence to what you're saying. That
Right.
The ruble's gotten stronger.
Yeah, it's showing the dollar drop there, I think, is what you're showing, isn't it?
Yeah. So the dollar's dropped off.
The dollar has lost almost 98% of its total value, as I understand it, at this point.
From the Fed time, I mean, I think it's even more, like 90, because it was 98% before 2020 when Trump started printing all the money. Okay, so I gotta go to the places where I just can't avoid. Go back to the main camera if you don't mind. Zoom ahead a little bit. I know we're covering a lot of ground here. We have white hats, which are people that want to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm going to skeptically say, even though all of the incentives in their position of power would be to just be self-interested and greedy like all the rest of them, but they're going to go against self-interest and do the right thing. They're going to care about the poor person, even though...
Not necessarily just the poor person, but the planet as a whole. They want to see abundance. They want to see security. They want to see a planet without war, and that's one of the...
But this has gone on for like decades, right? So people have, according to this theory, people started this fight, and they actually never saw, like their generation's already gone, so they passed the baton to the next white hat generation without ever even seeing the breakthrough. Which I'm not saying people don't do that, right? Like in the church, that's what we do. We actually give up our life on earth,
right,
for the for eternity. But this seems like it's not happening through the church. This is happening through the political sphere.
It's happening in different spheres. It's happening in the political, the military, and the economic spheres. And the way the Christian community found out about this whole thing with the exchange of economies and currencies is that an attorney was privy to...
This is Lynn Wood?
Pardon?
Was this Lynn Wood?
No,
Okay.
no, this is prior to Lynn.
Okay.
This is a Christian attorney that had found out about this prior to the internet. And I don't think the elitists really counted on the internet being so damaging to their cause. But when they found out about this, they started spreading to the church groups at first. And that spread out throughout the globe as far as what was happening for the currencies revaluing to their true values. And this is where people start finding out, wow, if I invest in a physical currency, and that currency is being used right now. If I buy Vietnamese dong, that currency is an active, live currency. It's not something that's worthless, but it's not of value enough here in this country to go down to the store and buy something with it.
The Vietnamese should have chose a different name for their currency, I'll tell you that. Now let me ask you, Gregory says, I got 6,000 Korean won in my wallet.
Korean?
Yeah, is that good for him or should he sell it?
Again, I'm not a financial advisor here.
That's all right.
So
What should he do?
there are 27 currencies that are going to revalue. Korea does fall in that revaluation, but it's not going to be your top leader
Sucks
of
for
the
you,
currencies.
Gregory, but you might still...
So there's money, there's value there.
but might not be the best. So
but
what's your top pick?
I'm going to give you some picks of the Iraq dinar, the Vietnamese dong, the Indonesia rupiah,
yeah, not
the Afghanistan Afghani, the actual Iranian rial.
So basically, the nations where we suppress their
Yes.
Okay.
We suppress their ability,
their true value,
their value,
of their currency. Okay, in order to basically ruin them in war. And Gregory gave credence to that with the the dime model: diplomacy, information, military, economic. It's the model for national power. Western way of war uses all four of these instruments of power to wage war. Totally get that. So here's kind of like where I'm at with this. I see so much truth in terms of how nation building works, the perverse incentives at the top to manipulate currencies, to control economies, and to win wars, to get your way. I see all of that as like so clear. Like that's the draw, I guess. Like that, all of like the how we got here, the powers that be, totally on board. Where I get lost is now that's going to change. Not because the return of Christ, or not because of a Bible reason, because I don't see anything in the Bible that says in the last days.
Let me throw back a question to you.
Yeah, hit me.
Do you believe that we are going to see a surgically removal of corruption in this country and in other countries around the world in the very near future?
I believe. Okay, that's a good question. It's a good question. So my take on it again, I'm kind of going just straight Bible on this. Now, I'm not saying that I fully understand Bible in every way, especially the book of Revelation. Okay, I'm a student in this, so search yourself, right? That's what I always say. Search the scripture yourself, ask the Holy Spirit yourself. My understanding of Bible prophecy and where we're at is that the world systems will completely hit zero, like hit rock bottom. So there won't be like good, I believe the church will, right now the way I understand it is there's a great destruction of the middle in every major arena. There's a destruction of the middle in the financial arena. There will be no more middle class. There'll be the ultra rich and the ultra poor. There's a destruction of the middle in the spiritual arena. There will be no more lukewarm Christians. They won't survive. There'll be radical, spirit-filled, power-driven Christians, and then there'll be crazy atheists that are persecuting the church. Like we're going to the realm of extremes, because in all prophecy is leading to this dividing of the world, the wheat from the tares, right? So the way I understand it is like the political sphere is where the Antichrist spirit comes through. We know the end of the story is a one world global government where you can't buy or sell without a mark of the beast, where there is complete loss of freedom. So I don't see that realm going towards freedom and prosperity. I see that realm going towards total totalitarian dictatorship based on the Bible. That is where I'm getting my. Right. So I see this idea that through that realm we're going to have a season of like total change and prosperity. It goes against what I understand to be Bible prophecy. But the church, however, is going to be glorious. So I'm always careful, unless I'm at liberty to say, hey, don't lose hope. We're not trying to be fear mongers here. The church will shine brighter and brighter, but the earth will be covered in gross darkness. The world system will collapse. That's kind of how I see it. So the global reset, the Q, the white hat, I know they're all different. I'm not trying to just group them all, and you've been helpful to help me understand what's different in those, even though I'm still learning how to talk about it. It seems to have false hope in the world systems to actually have redemption and prosperity once again, whereas the Bible, I believe, describes a utter destruction of the things of the flesh so that the things of the spirit can reign. Judy, do you want to jump in on any points on that?
Yeah, I actually had a question for you. Could it all be possible that this list that we looked at earlier, that seems like it's going to really give this hope, basically, too good to be true, kind of thing? Could that be? Well, no. Actually,
it feels like
since we know
get rid of the IRS.
if you gave everyone 10,000, let's just keep it simple. If everyone in the U.S. had $10,000, or like you said, how the lottery actually ruins people's lives. You said that earlier today. what we're talking about. But if
Right.
but if everyone had $10,000, would it not be true that the people who knew how to spend the money, and I guess you have to go more extreme to make this actually a good point, but if everyone had $10 million, the people who knew how to spend the money and that were wise with their money
Would have it
would
all
be
back in
blessed.
their
Yeah,
pocket.
but the people that were actually poor and like the people who were in poor situations right now, if they actually had the $10 million, they would actually be worse off than before, and families also torn apart. Could it be the devil
That's where
appearing
your
as an angel of
humanitarian
light?
projects come into play. And I agree with you. There are going to be some people that you can try and help them be the best they can be, but they're going to still destroy themselves.
Because you know more than it. I mean, we're on the front lines together. So by the way, BC and I, we he's a huge part of the House of Joy Church. So we're actually serving on the front lines. And what comes to mind, and I won't name any specifics, but you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, there's certain people that don't need extra money because they don't have any idea how to steward it. Like, basically, if they got a check for $10,000, it would like ruin their life. So I look at, like, which is why Jesus says those who are not faithful with little, even what they have will be taken away from them and given to the one who is faithful, because Jesus loves everybody, and sometimes just having more money destroys people's lives. So the idea of like everybody's going to have this value that's ascribed to their social security card that's going to come into people's lives. Mm-hmm. Some people that I know personally, that I'm literally ministering to, I would be like, please, Lord, don't do that. That will ruin their life. And so, anyway, there's just some question. Like, obviously, that list that we brought up, I think all of us in this room would say, "Oh my goodness! Imagine a world with no debt. Imagine a world with no income tax, with no IRS."
Yeah, and Trump has done some of these things already in preparation. He's taken the IRS and taken it and placed it underneath the power and authority of the United States Treasury Department. And if you go to some of the Federal Reserve branches around America, there's several testimonies that have called into these articles and said, this building's boarded up. There's nobody in this building anymore.
Wow. Well, I mean, honestly, just that, if we got rid of just the income tax, I personally, I'm not trying to be like a sensationalist or something. I would be so shocked. It would be such a biblical proportion, like a biblical sized miracle, because everything about my understanding of public choice economics and how games work, governments don't get smaller ever. They only die. They only collapse. Cancer doesn't go away by itself. It just kills the host body. The parasitical class doesn't just give up. How many people in the United States have become parasites? And I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm by the definition of a parasite, in the economic sense that I'm using it, is they don't produce anything. Right. They actually exist off of a host body. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not just talking about welfare. There's all like government jobs as well. I mean, again, not trying to be too harsh, but literally, if the dollar went away, about half of the country isn't producing anything. Right. To trade in a barter economy. Right. So they would immediately. So
the last number I heard was 45% of Americans receive some sort of form of assistance from the government.
Well, what would tax professionals do? Who do taxes for people?
There's going to be a big upset in some different professions. Attorneys are going to have to learn a new way of law.
The admiral, oh man, talk about tax attorneys. Again, if this happens, you destroy. Yeah. In a good way, by the way. We would all celebrate it, but you would definitely see a massive restructuring in a positive way.
You brought this verse out this morning, and I heard it once again from Mario Murillo this morning when I was doing a walk. This is in Isaiah chapter 3, verse 10. Say to the righteous that it shall be well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. Woe to the wicked, it shall be ill with them, for the reward of his hands shall be given to him. Mario was talking about today that there is a finding out and God's wrath is coming, and he said it's going to be a surgical removal of corruption in our country. And I've heard numbers as high as 98% of our Congress has been compromised for the simple ride that it may have taken to Epstein Island. For those of us who understand what that's all we haven't seen the corruption that's going to be revealed yet. And when Trump came in, if you remember, he said, "Oh, there's 140, I think 3 or 5 judge positions that were left open by Obama. Why didn't he fill those up? I'm going to oblige him. I'm going to fill those up." And from my understanding, he's got those people waiting in the wings, that when the corruption is surgically removed, he will have people ready to move into the leadership positions. Not just the judges, but also for a temporary setup of House of Representatives, Senators, Congress. Sarah states that after this reset happens, within 120 days, we will have a new election that will be a true Republic election.
That's kind of what Buck's saying. So, and Gregory says that I pierced his soul with my government workers comment. And you know, Gregory, I totally meant it to be the most offensive thing possible to you, friend. You know, I'm coming right after your heart. No, and you know, you guys know I'm joking, and of course Gregory is probably joking as well. I mean, I hope you are. You know my heart on this, that, you know, obviously if the government stole your job in a sense, you know, you're meant to be a protector and a defender, and well, you're kind of forced into those places. And actually, I think a lot of people that have legitimate skill sets would do just fine without the state. Okay, here's my question. And this is becoming clear. This is like becoming more clear. A lot of these bullet points on this website, and this is again just kind of like a summary of Nasara, right, and Jasara. A lot of these are like, oh, I could imagine that being a godly good thing. But every now and then they throw in this thing that, to me, it's like it reveals the good, not even too good to be true, too simple and actually not godly. Like the first point, it zeroes out all credit card, mortgage, and other bank debt due to illegal banking and government activities. Or again,
but understanding where that debt came from.
Or number 5, increases benefits to senior citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just says that, but like, who's giving the benefits? Because is it making slaves? Because if it's talking about like healthcare workers, or if it's talking about senior care workers, is the government going to force those people to spend more hours? Right, not just dollars. Remember, it's all goods and services. They don't have any.
What they're talking about is increasing benefits in a financial way to the senior citizens.
And then my follow-up question is that means maybe like printing more money and giving it to older people.
It's not printing more money, because we're doing away with the United States dollar, which is a fiat currency. We're going to attach, in fact, if you want to look up HR 5404, it states right now, and I'm sorry I didn't give this to you earlier, Judah, because I didn't know we were going to go there.
He's flying, man. You're testing him. Just test him.
HR 5404 is a bill that was brought before, I think, the 115th or 117th Congress. And it was stated, and it's very small and simple, so it's easy to find, easy to read. You don't have to read pages of this. It states that the United States dollar is now, currently, attached to a weight of gold. What it's waiting for is a true administration signature to put it into law. I'll put it that way. So this $100 bill that Judah put up earlier, that shows us that we're in a transitional state from a fiat currency to a gold-backed asset currency, really backs this bill up, because at some point in time we're going to lose the full face value of the dollar. And if we do that without a replacement of a gold-backed dollar, which is where every fiat currency, there's been 7 of them in the history of our planet, has ended.
But even that, though, so it's gold. So and for clarification, let's say tomorrow everybody woke up with 50 gold bars, like big, heavy, like 8-pound bars. Is anybody more wealthy?
Well, yes, in the sense that maybe they didn't have that 50 bars to start with.
I know, but what can they do with it, though? What can they do?
Well, that's a medium of exchange, like you said. So you can go out, if you don't have enough food to feed your kids, you'll be able to do that. If you don't
because there's no more extra food than there was yesterday. No, I didn't say any food increase.
No, I'm not saying there's extra food or not.
But everybody's competing for the same thing.
But you have the means to purchase the food, and if you've got a grocery store that's limited on your, we're even seeing this now in the last couple of years. There's a lot less availability and of different.
So all the poor people. Okay, go back to full screen.
The only way that I think that could work is if the costs of everything go up, because if
you have to actually produce more stuff. So let's take the grocery store example. We're all going to Walmart. All the poor people woke up. They have 50 extra gold bars. All the poor people descend upon Walmart in a stampede to spend those 50 gold bars. There's no new stuff. There's not more TVs. There's not more food. The capital stock of the economy didn't increase. The medium of exchange increased, but again, to the economic trained mind, that didn't do anything to the economy. It didn't make the pie bigger. It didn't feed more people. It didn't provide more opportunity for anyone. It's just an accounting phenomenon. It's a strictly a monetary supply phenomenon. It never actually has produced new things for people to enjoy. So in our example, if you take a little economy, everybody descends upon Walmart. They got these 50 gold bars. Well, almost immediately, let's say all, just for the sake of fairness, they all get there at the exact same time, and they all are in the exact same line. There's not like there was more stuff to buy at Walmart. So all that happens is the prices of the goods go up in an exact proportion to the new amount of the medium of exchange. So no one actually was able to get anything else.
But that's just it. The medium of exchange and the value of the dollar is going to change our country's value on assets.
Relative to other countries, which is the fair point, right? The other, like I could see that the Iranian dinar or Iraq dinar goes up relative to the dollar. And all that means is we're screwed in the U.S. No one here has helped. People in Iraq are doing better because they got justice served because we manipulated their currency to be, which means they had to export more and import less. Yes. And we were able to import more and export less.
But there will be a fallout to the United States and other countries around the world because with Iraq's increase of wealth and them having a value of a currency that has dramatically changed now to the positive, there are countries and companies just waiting for their revaluation right now to jump in and they've been in the process of doing this. They just released the most advanced ATMs on the planet with the help of the United States Treasury Department. We're alongside of them trying to help them rebuild their economy, and we understand totally what their dollar is actually going to be worth. And so other companies and countries are making contracts and have been making contracts in anticipation of the revaluation. So when they go in and they start building the infrastructure, they've already got in their new budget for this year to build 1,000 schools and over, I think, 1,000 hospitals.
This is in Iraq.
That's in Iraq. This is going to cause prosperity in other countries that have the ability and the expertise to be able to do these infrastructure builds.
And I definitely said, Gregory, you have a good point. So Gregory says maybe more people would increase production of goods and commodities or services, right? Because no IRS or income tax. So again, going back to that list, yes, eliminate the income tax. I could see immediately the economic analysis of that is double thumbs up, good. It will immediately increase prosperity in the country. Immediately. Because you'll have less theft. You're not breaking God's law.
Right.
You'll have more, the allocation of resources will be more fair. You won't have but then again, eliminate the income tax, eliminate all these government programs. Guess who gets the bad end of that deal in the short run? All that 45% of people that are sucking from the teat of the government supply. They don't just magically get better. No, they have to actually go get a job now, which is better for their long-term soul, by the way. It's actually much better for them and their family and their generations to come to remove all the government help from them. But in the short run, it's
going to be painful.
It's going to be painful. They go into the servant class. So I see that. I see the, again, if we pulled that list up, we don't have to, but if you pulled up that list, many of those things are like, yes, that would be so good. But what trips me up with Nassar and Jazara is there's a few of them that seem to lack economic literacy in how it will actually, you can't just say, I want everybody to be richer. That's not how the world works. You can't just say, I want everybody to have a better time. That's not how the world works. Like there's a process, there's a wisdom, there's capital, there's stock capital that has to grow. And so when I hear things like that, like all seniors, and Buck, you said it too, the seniors have been under slavery longer, so they will be helped more. But by who? At what cost? Because when you say stuff like that, when you say they will be helped more, it means they're going to have more food. Maybe they'll have better care. But what you're actually doing is you're enslaving the people who produce food. Because if they're going to have more food, that means those people are going to be forced to produce the food.
Right.
If they're going to have more senior care, that means that you're going to go to the young nurse and say, hey, this person was mistreated, so now you have to, instead of spending 40 hours a week helping the senior, you got to spend 60 hours a week with no increase in pay. Right? You see what I'm saying? Like you can't, like.
And it's not fair to that person.
It's not fair to that person.
Well,
so you can't just guarantee more. You can't just say.
It creates a demand, though, that we've lost many nurses through this COVID scandemic.
Yeah.
Because they're just not needed. The hospitals were not filling up like they thought they would because of this. So and also they were not treated very well at all in this pandemic. Nurses were worked overtime, forced to wear masks, mandated several long
and a
hours.
ton of them left, right?
Exactly. A lot of them have left, and so we're same with the pilots, and we can go into how the vaccination.
Oh, yeah. You saw that video of the 1,000 pilots? Have you seen that?
No.
I think it was in Fort Worth. Can you pull that up?
But just how the COVID has affected our pilot inventory.
Southwest pilots.
They're dropping like crazy because this is causing coagulation in the blood, heart attacks, strokes.
Wow.
And the pilots are not there because they're dying with this COVID.
It's called strike. Southwest pilot strike. This is a crazy video. I want to show you, BC. This is crazy. They're the second one. See how they're lined up right there? There's 1,000 plus on strike of 100. It says hundreds with it. It was at Dallas Love. That's where it was at.
Mm-hmm.
And go to that one full screen and just you can mute the audio. There you go. There we go. Now we're on. So look at this. Look at all these pilots on strike. This is a sidebar, and I'll pull it back to because I have my big question that I wanted to hear your answer on. Where are we at? Oh, we're at an hour and a half. So we're gonna wrap this up. This will be the last question. And I always, again, I really like this conversation because it helps me like air out. Right, the pursuit of truth is important. We should pursue truth. And arguments or truth doesn't need help. Like truth will stand for itself, right? It doesn't, in a sense, it can undergo the most rigorous scrutiny and heavy analysis, and it'll still stand. So this has been helpful for me just to kind of air out some of this stuff. My kind of big question, my $1 million question. I know. We've kind of gone fast through some of this stuff, but my $1 million question is, and it's been on, and I just want to hear your answer. Now you'll have the last word on this, so I won't push back at all. But I am gonna in the question, I'm gonna kind of like, I'll reveal my opinion a bit just because the way I asked the question. If Trump is one of these white hat guys, why did he push for Operation Warp Speed, which put tons of money into the pharmaceutical company pockets? Why did he put Fauci at the top? Why did he close down the free world? Why is he still not? Is it all 5D chess? And how in 5D chess would it ever be a move to put hundreds of millions of dollars in Pfizer's pocket in the middle of this 5D chess game, when some of those guys are going to, die before we ever see the victory or the justice? Like, I guess I'm trying to wrap my head. If Trump is this hero, why has he made decisions like he's made? What is your take on it? And I won't answer back. You have the last word.
As far as the vaccine, Trump has come out and stated, and actually, I think you will find definition of, and I'm going to murder this the word hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, I can't ever say that word. My tongue gets all twisted. And also ivermectin are known antidotes, if you want to call them, for the vaccine.
Yeah.
Those are things that Trump early on said that I'm using these things, and they kind of shut him down on being able to talk about that. To answer your question, I think in every war, and this is a war, there's going to be casualties, and there are people that are going to lose their lives, sadly, and they've already lost their lives due to the evilness of Fauci and others that are involved with making this vaccine mandatory across the world. One of the ways I think that Trump looks at the strategy is allowing your enemy to expose themselves and to waken the people that are asleep. And it may have sound cruel, but you'll see even in our present administration that they're making more and more comments that are just ludicrous. I mean, the stupidity of the evilness is just out in our face, and they're not afraid to do that. And so it's trying, I think, in number one way is to wake the people up. Charlie Ward is one of the guys that I follow. You may or may not agree with all of that he says, but he said early on that he understood that this whole pandemic had certain phases. The first was the pandemic, the vaccine, the alien invasion, the supply chain, the breakdown of the economy was all planned years ago to bring the economy of the world to a halt so that they could initiate, whether it's from the White Hats, which I believe took their actions and changed them for good, but the globalist agenda was to take this and make it a reset. There was two reset agendas. The globalist reset agenda was to take our freedoms away, digitalize everything, and keep printing money the way they always have and keep us enslaved to the debt. The White Hats are coming in and they want to rid the high echelon Rockefellers, the Venetian families, those types of people that have enslaved us for hundreds of years in a debt slave system. And partly the way you have to do that is expose the corruption. And hopefully people will see that, take advantage of what they see, and change their own governors, states, the politicians in the state, and even higher. We've got an election coming up. The primaries are coming up in November, and it's going to be an interesting time for America to either make the right choices or not make the right choices compared to how awake we are as a country.
It seems, if I could summarize, I know I said I wouldn't talk at all, but I'm gonna. I won't push back at anything you said. I'll just summarize. Buck says, "I love BC. You know, and hey, would you just tell? She's promised several times she'd come to church. Would you just invite her to church?
Buck, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Is that her name?
Yep.
Really? Okay.
Buck, come to church.
Please come to church.
Come on, Buck.
I think you'll like it. Since we have something in common.
You see the comment up there? I love BC. Yep. I knew you would, Buck. And so one reason I wanted to bring BC on, first, I just always love my time with them. We have a really good time. We've had really funny stories. We're doing ministry alongside each other, so we have stories from the front lines we can share that are just, you know, we've had a lot of fun. But he's definitely more informed with this movement. And again, I'm not trying to group everything into one, but I would loosely call it Q or the White Hats or this global reset. It seems like the two resets is kind of like the summary of this night. There's the globalists that want the reset to lead to the total enslavement of the human being through a loss of all freedom, centralization of all power. There's the other side that believes that there'll be a liberation to all people, and
return sovereignty to the individual and the countries.
Sovereignty to the individual and power. Now, I see these two camps. Obviously, I want, in a sense, it would be really nice to have the latter be true. The Bible seems to inform me that actually the globalist agenda is true, or maybe both are true. Maybe the church is experiencing the liberation while the other, you know, maybe you have this what Andrew Torba from Gab calls parallel economies emerge, and you have both being true. And maybe your hope isn't misplaced. Maybe you're actually looking at you're seeing things. Again, would be my opinion. You're seeing things through the lens of the glory of the church, while I'm seeing through Bible prophecy the world, you know, getting darker and darker while the church gets brighter and brighter. But ultimately, my thought is we have a rapture coming up, and we have the second coming of Christ, where all things will be set right. But I want, you know, this is what Buck says at the end here. What did you say?
COVID-19 means Certificate of Vaccine Identification 2019.
Okay. Plan forever.
Plan.
Yeah, and a lot of that, again, a lot of this stuff from this, you know, whatever the movement, I kind of summarize it in three ways. I would agree with a lot of it's like, oh yeah, that seems to be true. Oh yeah, that seems to to line up or add up. You know, that resonates with me as true. I get off on the 4D military strategy thing as a thing that a Christian should hope in, because it seems deceptive in nature and it goes against the character of Christ. Where he says, let your yes be your yes, your no be your no. And then again, my military friends, like I know Gregor, you're probably like throwing up in your mouth when I say that, because in war, you might feel like you have to do things like that. You have to have the bait, the sting operation. You have to be deceptive because you're dealing with deceptive people. So I honor that. I understand where you're coming from. I'm not fully convinced, but I do find the conversation really interesting. I hope you've liked it too. Hey, if you did like it, let us know. You know, if you want more content like this, if you want more discussions like this, I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
I did, and there's more history that I can bring up to substantiate some of the things that we've talked about tonight.
I would say we probably just hit the surface on some of this stuff,
have.
which was the point, guys. We talked before going online. I said, hey, let's just kind of like do a introduction level, your story, how you know some of this stuff, because you know there's so much to cover. You don't want to go down a rabbit trail too deep. And not, you know, at least that was our heart tonight, was just to introduce you guys. If you haven't heard of this, I wanted you to and I know a lot of you have, right? So I wanted to explore it with you live on the air. Again, this was unscripted. We did not plan the outcome before time, and I've learned a lot tonight. I feel better about the discussion. I hope you have too. Any last words before
let me just give a real
sign off?
small summary on this. When I first found out about this whole global reset, it was a step of faith to actually purchase the physical currencies, which I'm anticipating that will revalue at a higher rate. But as I've done that, I've seen the political lineup, I've seen the banking especially line up, and now in just the last 6 months, I'm hearing prophets that are speaking of the crash coming, the corruption to be exposed. Some of those prophets are Mario Murillo. Some of those prophets are Lance Wallnall, and also Robin Bullock, Hank Kuhneman. These people are all coming in agreement with what I'm seeing, and it's a joy to me to see that, man, I'm on the right side. I'm on God's team as far as what they see, and I place them a lot higher than I am as far as having discernment.
Well, and I know you're finishing up, but I just don't know. I love, because I love Lance Wallnall, for example. I love Mario Murillo's. We went to that Flashpoint thing. That was awesome. I mean, talk about an awesome event. Would they agree with are they saying these kinds of things as well? Like
they're saying them they're saying that we're going to experience a prosperity in this country like we've never seen. They're saying that we're going to see
instruments like Nassar and Jassara.
Yes, they are actually. They're actually bringing this stuff. Some of them are more general in terms, but I see exactly what they're saying, and it lines up with what I've studied on a little bit more detailed level. So
that
it's
means
encouraging.
A lot to me. That definitely.
When you see these three
credibility.
areas lining up as one, that's what gives me faith to say, wow. Thank you, God, for answering my prayer back when. And I see now physically in the media and in the prophetic, they're lining up. And it sounds like we're very close to this happening. I'm not going to try and put a date on it. Many people have. But it looks like we're very close before the fall is over or begins that we're going to see this start to show itself physically, so that everybody is like, oh, yeah, I guess what he was talking about is right. We just saw an increase 2 weeks ago in the Vietnamese dong.
We have some questions coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. If you're finished that sentence, if you're not done.
Go ahead.
Kyle says, how did you get connected with Lucas in the House of Joy? We actually met at a Friday
prayer meeting,
and I had so this is the Lord, right? I had a prophetic word. I still remember it, about you being in the financial sphere at a place of great influence. And I forget the exact word. You might remember better than me, but I knew it was the Lord highlighted you as a influencer in this space, and which kind of lines up with a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. Ethan asked, BC, where do you believe we are in terms of the last days timeline? Where you heard Pastor Art say, the rapture might happen October, September of this year.
Yeah, and I'm going to be the first to say that I don't think Lucas and I agree on this, and I definitely don't think Arch and I agree with this. But we're brothers, so we can agree not to disagree, or how's
Well,
that
I
term?
don't know.
Disagree, not to agree.
I don't know, man. This might be the night.
All right. So what I believe, to answer your question, is I think, yes, the rapture and that is still here, but I believe that our timeline is extended. Because just from some of the prophets I've heard talk about this that have been on a timeline with God, but I'm not going to bring that person up. But what I see in a practical sense, and maybe this is too earthly, but if Proverbs says that the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous, and and again, I don't claim to understand God's mind, even though He says we have the mind of Christ, but I don't claim to understand how He thinks in certain ways. He's obviously higher than we are. If God is going to give the righteous all of these resources financially to be able to change the planet and allow somebody's living conditions to increase, to maybe they have the gospel easy access to them and translation of their language, which never has done before, wouldn't that be increasing our reaching the nations as commanded to us in Matthew? Wouldn't being able to increase their standard of living be something that they could enjoy? Is that something that heaven would agree with? Or would you rather live in poverty and sickness, where all the water that you play is filled with parasites and your kids die before your face? Or would we be nice, like Arch is doing, have the ability to put fresh water in every community on the planet? I see that as what God is trying to show Himself strong in righteousness, in mercy, in goodness. And I think that those resources, as they're provided for us in the Christian community and other communities that may believe in doing the same things as we are, I believe that is going to win people to Christ as well, and extend the timeline of where we're looking at the rapture and when the Antichrist comes in a strong point. And especially if we're going to be able to, like some of the prophets are saying, surgically remove the evil from our planet, the people that are high up that have been lording it over us for hundreds of years, and now they don't have the means financially, and they don't have the means spiritually, because if the demonic control those regions of high finance and high political, and those people are arrested, or worse, because of treason, and that in this country treason is the death penalty, and they're taken out, what does that do for the spiritual transition of the country and the world?
Buck says, I just want to read this comment out loud. Judah, can you, yep, there it is. Bo Polney lays out a timeline very well. He's all over YouTube. And I'm guessing that's a last days timeline. We teach on this a lot. I have strong convictions about it, but I do leave room. If you've heard the teaching that we did on the third day, it could be right in the beginning hours of the third day, and of course in the scripture the day is as 1,000 years is as a day, right? So it could be in the beginning moments of the third day, it could be in the afternoon of the third day, so it does leave room. I'm like a 2028 guy. It's like my it's like if I had to over under throw out my dart on where we're at, I'm like a 2028 guy. But it doesn't change my life today. I'm just all in to the preaching of the gospel, to the ministry of the kingdom of God, and I'd suggest you do that as well. Like, even if we had 100 more years or 200 more years or 300 more years, I don't think it actually changes the way you should respond to the gospel. I think everybody should push all their chips in the middle for King Jesus. Even if you had 300 years left, just go all into the kingdom. You won't be disappointed, and I think we can all agree on that, right? So,
yes.
Even if if me and BC and Pastor Arch were all sitting here right now, and we all had different convictions about where that time is that the rapture is coming, it doesn't change any of us in terms of what we're doing tomorrow, or it shouldn't. It shouldn't change what we're doing tomorrow. You always plan as though he's going to be back in 1,000 years, but you live with full commitment to the things of the kingdom as if he's coming back tonight. That's why that parable, he says, if you don't know when the master is returning, then you'll make sure to be on your best behavior, because he could come at any moment. And that parable really plays into the mindset that the Christian should have. If you know that he's coming 3 months from now, then people tend to rest on their laurels or whatever. They tend to shirk. Anyway, live as if he's coming back tonight. Amen. And just always be ready. Keep your lamps filled with oil. Keep that fire and those garments unstained. And I think you'll just absolutely and find that you actually enjoy life more. Ethan says it appears like things may be lining up for some of the end time events to rapidly be fulfilled. If this reset happened and things become better, how long do you think it would last? And so this is one thing me and BC have talked offline about. I'll let you answer it as we wrap up here. But just to frame it up, it could be both, right? Both of our worldviews could actually jive here, because if a whole bunch of money came into the hands of the righteous right now, see, again, this is kind of where I'm like, well, it shouldn't just go into anybody's hands. Like, everybody that has a social security number, by the way. like a lot of those people are terrible stewards, and it would be ungodly to give them an extra penny. But I do understand that we want to help them. We want to be a blessing to them. But just money is not what they need, and I've seen that firsthand. But if a lot of wealth did come into the hands of the righteous right now, I personally could see a 7-year acceleration as we approach the rapture of just crazy ministry impact for the kingdom. In terms of film, hitting all the 7 mountains, like Lance Wallnow does a great teaching on the mountains of influence. I could see those resources just being totally directed, and then we do more in 7 years for the kingdom than the last 1,000 years. And just because of the internet, because of the available technology, the means of travel and transportation, and because of the season, because the urgency of his return, and the grace that's on the latter-day church. So I could see actually both things. In other words, I don't know if it would take 100 years to accomplish all the good things for the kingdom, because we're in such a time of acceleration where we might disagree on that. But you know what I mean? Like, I actually could see in 5 years a tremendous amount of kingdom work happening if all the resources did flow over to the kingdom. But how would you? So Ethan's question was, it appears that like some of these some things may be lining up for some of the end times events to rapidly be fulfilled. If this reset happened and things become better, quote unquote, how long do you think it would last?
I don't know. I think that's anybody's guess.
Would you agree though with the would you agree that the tribulation is a completely centralized one world government, electronic currency?
Yes, I do. And I could see where after years, maybe decades, maybe 100 years or more, that the people that were a part of this generation and understood what happened and how hard it was to fight to get to this point where evil was removed in high places in this country and the world, that there would be a lull of, oh wow, we've got it so nice and cushy, we can just speak to this replicator and make any steak for Judah and potatoes every
Judah.
night, and this replicator could take care of all of our needs as far as, oh, I need a new starter for my car, I've just plugged it in, new starter, bam, it's right there available, it appears before my eyes. Kind of Star Trek technology. But that technology has been available to us but suppressed, and that's part of what Nasara talks about, is when the reset happens, there will be over 6,000 new types of what's the word I want to use? Technologies revealed to us that have been suppressed by the elitist.
Watching you on the screen, you look like a more legitimate version of Chris Pratt a little bit. You guys see that? Yeah, that's a good compliment, by the way.
I'll take that.
Chris Pratt from we went and watched Jurassic Park together.
I survived Jurassic Park by that.
That's right.
Gas line getting cut. That was in the movie prior, I think, or two.
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys for joining us tonight. Oh, and final question I have. If you can actually just say,
I decline. Okay.
One of my main. One of the main convictions of Bible prophecy is the fig tree budding. And I'm asking because I think some of you guys have questions about this.
Referral of
Israel becoming a nation in May 14th,
1948.
1948. And that generation seeing all these things, which, according to the Bible, generation is going to be between 80 to 120 years, right? So
okay, let me answer that with this question. If we have new technologies that are going to be revealed to us that have been suppressed, that lengthen the time period of a person's life, how would that generation look then? Would it extend it maybe another 100 years, 200 years. So where would our timeline go if that were possible?
So, fair point. So in other words, if there was a medical miracle in a sense to extend someone's life to live 300 years again, no problem.
No, we know it's already been done in
And I
Genesis
actually
that
just taught-
900 years was the limit that God gave
And
originally
you
for
heard me
our
just
bodies.
teach, right? We won't die, right? In Christ, I refuse to believe that I'm going to die physically. Now, I believe that. Now, I don't know if I would change what a generation is defined as, because even if you live for much longer, I don't know if that changes what a generation is. Because in terms of technology, they say a generation's 7 years now because of the rate of change. So, in terms of how a Bible defines a generation, based on Jesus' teaching and context and everything, I don't know if. Again, fair point though. The interesting point, and I will honor that it's a fair point, that if extending a person's life and their years, I don't know if it changes a generation, but it is an interesting, fair point. So we'll end it there. Hey, love y'all. Hopefully you've enjoyed this friendly discussion. I think BC made a great point, and one of the reasons I wanted to have him on is friends can talk and explore truth together, even if they disagree on some pretty big things. The date of the rapture, you could say it's a pretty big central component to someone's theology, but it doesn't have to split you up. It doesn't have to lead to any sort of
Division.
ugliness or division. And you can talk about things and explore truth together. And at the end of the day, everybody should be blessed because of it. I feel blessed. Hopefully you feel blessed. Hopefully you all feel blessed. Buck says technologies like Tesla clump for free energy and med beds. So I'm going to check out this Bull Polney character, Buck. And I'm gonna bring it if he's off. I'm gonna just bring it on. Just kidding. Hey, love y'all. Judah, you can play us out in a second here. Let's just for a moment speak the blessing over people. Father, thank you so much that you've given us this time together to explore truth. Lord, help us to just know the things we need to know, and if we don't need to know them, also make that clear. Oftentimes there's truth out there or there's things that are true that we just don't need to actually know. Doesn't actually help us. But Lord, if there is anything that we need to know that helps us do what we're supposed to do, Father, bring that knowledge clearly to us and help us receive it for your glory. Father, we just pray for every person watching this that they would be edified, that if there's anything that we spoke about that isn't going to actually help them, just take it away. But Lord, if it would help them, if it would orient them towards eternity, if it would bring about glory for you in their life, Lord, seal it by your Holy Spirit in Jesus' name. I bless everybody watching right now just with great grace. Sleep good tonight. Have awesome sleep. Have divine dreams. Have healing in your body, prosperity in your mind, hope in your soul. Know that tomorrow is going to go well for you because you've trusted in Jesus Christ. And hope is one of the most powerful things you can have. So I love this discussion. One reason, because it's filled with hope. Hope for the future. Hope for good days ahead. I think we can all agree in the church, the days ahead are going to get brighter and brighter and brighter until the full noonday is here. And Father, for that we say thank you. We say, Father, use us for your divine purpose in Jesus' name. Amen. Love you guys. Yep, bedtime for my boys. Miss Sonia says that's true. We're going home right now. Love you.
Daddy, we're fixing you later.
Okay, guys, come on in and say, you guys get in there and say, see you later, everybody. Go ahead, get in there.
See you later.
Oh, you gotta get on the camera, Sam. You gotta get on the camera.
Slide over. Slide over.
See you later. Bye.
All right, Tia, Judah, play us out.
So I won't bow to another